Imagine spending your entire life building something meaningful. You worked hard, you paid your bills, you raised your children, you bought a home, you saved for retirement, you made sacrifices that nobody saw. And now, after decades of effort, you want one simple thing. You want your family to be okay after you're gone. That's why many Americans create a will. They sit down with an attorney, they sign some documents, they place the paperwork in a safe place, and then they breathe a sigh of relief. They believe everything is taken care of. They believe their family is protected. They believe their wishes will be honored. But what if I told you that for thousands of families across America, a will becomes the beginning of the nightmare, not the end of it? What if the very document designed to protect your loved ones ends up creating conflict, confusion, resentment, and years of legal battles? It sounds unbelievable, but it happens more often than most people realize. In fact, some of the worst family disputes in America begin after a parent passes away and leaves behind only a will. Today, we're going to uncover the hidden dangers that many families discover too late. We'll talk about why a will alone may not be enough, how it can unintentionally create problems, and what every family should understand before it's too late. Because the biggest threat to your legacy isn't taxes, it isn't the stock market, it isn't inflation. The biggest threat to your legacy may be the misunderstanding and conflict that happens after you're gone. Think about this for a moment. You spend 30, 40, maybe 50 years building wealth. Then one document determines what happens next. Most people assume that once a will is signed, assets automatically go where they're supposed to go. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. Many people don't realize that a will often starts a legal process called probate. Probate sounds harmless. In reality, it can be a long, expensive, and frustrating process. Imagine a father passes away. His will clearly states that his 3 children should receive equal shares of his estate. The instructions seem simple, yet before anyone receives anything, the estate enters probate court. Now the family is dealing with paperwork, court filings, deadlines, legal procedures, waiting periods, and questions. Lots of questions. How long will this take? Who is responsible for handling everything? Can the house be sold? When will money be distributed? What happens to unpaid bills? The grieving process suddenly becomes a legal process, and that legal process can last months, sometimes more than a year, in complicated cases, even longer. During that time, tensions begin to rise. One sibling may believe things are moving too slowly. Another may think the executor is making mistakes. Someone starts asking uncomfortable questions. Someone else becomes defensive. Before long, conversations become arguments become accusations, and relationships begin to crack. What's heartbreaking is that many parents never intended this. They believed their will would make things easier. Instead, it became the source of conflict. Another issue that surprises many families is privacy. Most people assume their financial affairs remain private after death, but probate records are often public. That means information about assets, debts, beneficiaries, and distributions may become accessible through court records. For families who value privacy, this can be shocking. Imagine spending decades managing your finances carefully. Then, after your passing, details about your estate become available to people who were never meant to know them. Neighbors may hear about it. Distant relatives may hear about it. Even opportunists may hear about it. Privacy disappears at the exact moment your family is most vulnerable. Then comes one of the most dangerous problems of all, the fairness problem. Every parent wants to be fair, but fairness isn't always interpreted the same way. Let's say a mother leaves more money to one child than another. Maybe she had a good reason. Perhaps one child spent years helping with caregiving. Perhaps another child had already received significant financial assistance during life. Perhaps there were circumstances nobody else understood. But once she's gone, she can't explain her reasoning. Now the children are left to interpret her decisions, and interpretation is where trouble begins. One child thinks, "Mum trusted me more." Another thinks, "Mum loved me less." One believes the decision was justified, another believes it was unfair. Old wounds reopen, childhood rivalries return, resentments that were buried for decades suddenly resurface. The inheritance becomes more than money, it becomes a symbol of love, a symbol of approval, a symbol of worth, and when people attach emotions to money, conflict often follows. What's even more surprising is that equal distributions don't always solve the problem. Imagine 3 siblings inherit their parents' house equally. At first, everyone agrees. Then reality arrives. One sibling wants to sell immediately, one wants to keep the property, one wants to rent it out. Now what? The will may say they each own 1/3, but ownership doesn't solve disagreements. Who pays maintenance costs? Who handles repairs? Who covers property taxes? Who decides when to sell? What happens if one sibling refuses? These questions can tear families apart. A home that once created family memories suddenly becomes the source of family conflict, and unfortunately, these situations happen every day. Then there is the issue of personal belongings. This may sound small compared to houses and investment accounts, but sometimes personal belongings create the biggest fights. A wedding ring, a watch, a collection, a piece of furniture, a family photograph. These items may have little financial value, but their emotional value can be enormous. One child remembers dad's watch, another remembers being promised that same watch years earlier. Neither wants to give it up. Suddenly, family members are arguing over objects that cannot be divided equally. The conflict isn't really about the item, it's about memories, it's about emotions, it's about feeling connected to someone they loved. Unfortunately, a simple will often cannot prevent these disputes. Another problem appears when family members question the validity of the will itself. Many people assume that once a will is signed, it's untouchable. That's not always true. Wills can be challenged. Imagine an elderly father changes his will shortly before passing away. One child suddenly receives significantly more than everyone else. The remaining children become suspicious. Questions start circulating. Was dad pressured? Was he manipulated? Was he mentally capable of making that decision? Did someone influence him? Now attorneys enter the picture. Court hearings begin. Legal fees start accumulating. The estate becomes tied up. Family members take sides. Brothers and sisters who once celebrated holidays together now communicate through lawyers. The emotional cost becomes enormous. And even if the challenge ultimately fails, the damage may already be permanent. Relationships that took decades to build can be destroyed in months. Then there's another issue many families overlook: access to money. Imagine a husband handles all financial matters. His wife relies on him for managing accounts, paying bills, and overseeing investments. Then he passes away unexpectedly. She's grieving, she's overwhelmed, and she suddenly needs access to funds. But some assets may be delayed during probate. The process takes time. Meanwhile, expenses continue. Mortgage payments don't stop, insurance premiums don't stop, utility bills don't stop, medical expenses don't stop. The surviving spouse may find herself facing financial uncertainty at one of the most difficult moments of her life. That's a burden no family wants, yet many families experience exactly that situation. There's also something psychologists have observed repeatedly. People don't always behave rationally when grief is involved. Grief changes people. It affects emotions. It affects judgment. It affects relationships. A family that seemed perfectly united before a loss can behave very differently afterward. Misunderstandings grow quickly. Simple disagreements become major disputes. Someone feels excluded. Someone feels disrespected. Someone feels cheated. The inheritance becomes a battlefield for emotions that were never properly addressed. This is one reason estate conflicts are often so intense. They're rarely just about money. They're about relationships. They're about history. They're about unresolved feelings. And a will alone often cannot address those deeper issues. Here's another reality that many Americans never consider. Life changes. Families change. Relationships change. Yet many people create a will and never update it. Years pass, children get married, grandchildren arrive, divorces happen, deaths occur, financial situations change dramatically, but the will remains untouched. Then one day the family discovers that the document no longer reflects reality. Now confusion enters the picture. What did Mum actually want? Would Dad still feel the same way today? Should we follow outdated instructions? These questions create uncertainty, and uncertainty creates conflict. One of the most painful stories estate attorneys often share involves siblings who stop speaking to each other forever. Not for months, not for years, forever. Parents spend their entire lives encouraging family unity. Then after they're gone, disagreements over inheritance destroy that unity completely. Imagine that. Your greatest wish is to bring your family together. Yet your estate plan unintentionally pushes them apart. No parent wants that outcome. The truth is that a will is an important tool, but it was never designed to solve every problem. It's one piece of a larger plan. Many people mistakenly believe it's the entire plan. That's where trouble begins. A complete estate strategy often involves much more than simply writing a will. It involves communication. It involves organization. It involves planning for incapacity. It involves beneficiary designations. It involves understanding how assets actually transfer. And most importantly, it involves reducing opportunities for conflict. Because every opportunity for conflict becomes a potential source of family pain. At the end of the day, your legacy isn't your house. It isn't your bank account. It isn't your investments. Those things matter, but they aren't your true legacy. Your true legacy is the impact you leave on the people you love. It's the memories they carry. It's the values you taught them. It's the relationships that continue after you're gone. The greatest estate plan in the world means very little if it destroys the family it was meant to protect. That's why every family should take time to understand the limitations of a will. Not because wills are bad, they're not, but because believing a will alone solves everything can create a false sense of security, and false security is dangerous. The goal isn't simply to transfer wealth. The goal is to transfer wealth without transferring conflict. The goal is to provide clarity instead of confusion, peace instead of arguments, security instead of uncertainty, and unity instead of division. If your family depends on a will alone, now may be the time to ask an important question. Have you truly protected the people you love, or have you only protected the paperwork? Because the difference between those two things could determine whether your family remains together or falls apart after you're gone. And that's a decision far too important to leave to chance. If this message helped you think differently about estate planning, let us know in the comments. Have you ever witnessed inheritance disputes within a family? Your experience could help someone else avoid the same mistake. And if you found value in today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss future updates designed to help you protect your retirement, your finances, and your family's future. Thank you for watching, and remember, the best legacy isn't measured by what you leave behind. It's measured by what remains strong after you're gone.